I think it's the result of globalization. I think this is just about the big cities, and the bigger the city, the more there are people like this who cannot handle it. It's true that this is actually freeing them to be in touch with anybody across the world. So I feel like they talk to many more foreigners than I do, and in fact, anybody who speaks a good English now has then an opening to speak internationally. So I think there's always a national interpretation of a global trend.
Hi, well, welcome.
So Natalia Arshova, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is our incredible artist, photographer. And we also, not to confuse all of us, but we have Natalia Sarkova, who is a dear friend of Wondros and is helping to translate this remarkable story of the work that you're doing. So thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Natalia.
You know, I love these photos. I came across her work, I think from an article, and I thought the photos were very beautiful. So I just wanted to have a conversation about them.
Oh, thank you.
So how did she get the, I've seen some of her other work, but how did she get the idea to start filming people who were, you know, to photograph these people?
At first, I was in the institute writing my diploma, and I became sick. It was winter, and I was told that a nerve in my face was sick, and I had to stay at home to treat it. For 2 months, she couldn't leave her home. It was winter in Moscow, and so she spent most of her social life on the internet. And that's where she found out that some of her classmates were not leaving their home at all, that they were staying at home.
Что у меня есть бывшие одногруппники, которые не выходят из дома вообще по своему собственному желанию.
They were classmates, but some of these people haven't left their rooms in a very long time, yeah?
Да, когда я закончила...
So when she finished her diploma, she decided to first photograph her classmate who was having this lifestyle. And then slowly she realized from a classmate, she found somebody else and somebody else. And then people started contacting her in the social networks, telling her about their lifestyle. And in fact, she says that she believes that there are each one of us knows someone who has this lifestyle. And in her case, there are 5,000 followers she has in the social networks, and it was quite easy to find people who are sharing that lifestyle.
Is this lifestyle, you know, it's not just in Russia. So are you finding people all over the world that are starting to be part of this sort of community? I mean, you know, and then not to talk about the pandemic, but then there's that part. So this was before that, but I'm just curious.
I mean, is it a community?
It's not a community. That's a very good question, but it's not a community because these people are more likely to see their neighbors with their family. They have normal friends who come and visit them, but between each other, they do not really share a community sense. However, sometimes they meet through video games or computer games.
Между собой они знают друг друга и общаются в играх.
Is there something specific about why people are drawn to do this? I mean, what is the reason behind it if you have any insights into that? And maybe it's different for each person, but I'm so curious about that.
I think these people are really vulnerable. They can be very easily hurt. And so what happens is they live in a big city and the big city offends them. Somebody could be rude to them in the subway or in the street. And once they have been hurt, they stay this way because it's more comfortable for them to live in that way.
Социальных конфликтов и начинают оставаться дома. Они просто изначально очень более ранимые.
Do they call themselves hermits, or is that just a word that she found to describe them?
First of all, this word, the hermit, I did not come up with it. It was used afterwards, and these people don't really have a name for themselves.
Can we look at some of the photos together?
Мне их открыть. Oh, his name is Victor. Ну, лучше дальше по-русски. Его зовут Виктор.
His name is Victor, and he was 30 years old in this photo. His last name is Romanov, so he somehow believed that he was one of the heirs of the Romanov dynasty. So you have a number of photos on the walls. One of the photos is Yeltsin in red in the back, And then you also have the photo of Conchita, who was the transgender winner of, or she transvestite winner of Eurovision. He lives with 21 cats.
В стене там Борис Ельцин вверху в красном.
Now, was she ever worried going to his apartment by herself? I mean, did she have to gain his trust? How did it work to be able to even get there to take this photo?
At first, a neighbor of his, a friend of mine, recommended that I go and take a photo. And he told me that he's fairly normal and I could just go and take an interview and take some photos. When I arrived there, I was ringing the bell. I was trying to call his mobile, but he was not replying. So at the end, because he lives on the ground floor, I was able to knock on his windows, and then he saw me and he let me in. I felt that these people, nobody ever takes interest in them. In fact, most of the time they're criticized for being good for nothings, for being lazy, for not looking for work. So he was very happy to open up and speak to me. I found out later in 2019, he passed away. I'm not sure what was the cause, but he passed away in 2019.
I mean, did he ever talk about his sexual orientation as part of the story around why he felt safer at home?
No, he was straight. He was actually straight. He was married at the time, and his wife was a porno actress.
It's a very intimate photo. When you're doing this kind of work, is it hard to create this intimacy when you just meet them so quickly and you're just going to photograph them?
I don't know. I think it's just that I come in and I speak the truth. I tell him the truth that I want to take a picture of him because he's different.
You know, that's not one of his cats, is it?
Это не его кот, да?
No, it's my cat.
Okay, let's go to the next photo.
Фотографии.
Его зовут Anatoly.
So he was 39 years old. His name is Anatoly, and at the time of the photo, he's 39 years old. He hadn't had a job for 2 years. So to make a living, he rented one of the 2 rooms of his apartment to somebody else, and he lived in this one room. He collected, I think it's turtles. He collected turtles. He was interested in that. And one of the interesting elements of the photo is the Christmas tree you see in the corner. It's August. When I came to meet him, he was a very charming young man. And he told me that to make some money on the side, he worked as a copywriter as well.
It's such an interesting photograph. I mean, you just can know so much about him from just looking at this picture, you know. Why does he have the cow's head?
Yes, I do think it's a cow skull. In fact, he collected them from his travels, and then he would cover them with some kind of mix so that they don't smell bad. So that must be something from his collection.
What are the posters on the back wall?
One is a Russian rock band called Tantal. We don't know them. And the other one is an English or American band. And she doesn't remember the name, but it's radio something. So maybe you could enlarge it and see what it is.
You know, and that's Slayer. It's a Slayer t-shirt, the band Slayer.
Yeah, what's the t-shirt?
А что за майка у него такая? Slayer Moon.
Slayer это тоже какая-то рок-группа Slayer. Black metal группа.
It's also another rock band.
Okay, let's go to the next picture.
Yeah, I was thinking it might be Radiohead, but maybe it isn't. We'll have to find out. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this picture is so, it's such a beautiful photograph. And, you know, seeing the Angelina Jolie as the princess. It's like,
is it the Maleficent? Is that what that is?
Yeah, I think so, isn't it? So how did she meet these people? How did you meet these people? And what is the story we're looking at here? You know, each one of these photos are so mysterious. They say so much.
Thank you very much for compliment.
2 girls are, the sitting one is the owner of the flat. She's 28. The other one is 31. They've been living together for 10 years. I didn't ask them if they were partners, if they were involved or not. I felt like that would not be tactful to ask this question. I know that they're living on, the person paying for their living is their aunt, who is a dentist. and that their obsession is cosplay. So they could spend half a year or longer making a cosplay costume, and then they will go to a cosplay festival. And it could be as far as Japan. They'll go and participate, and then they will come back and work for another year in another costume.
So they don't mind leaving the house. They just stay at the house, and then if they need to go somewhere, they go as another person, as a character, to a conference, and then they come back and start the whole process again. But they don't go out very much, and they don't work.
Вот так.
So it could happen, yes, but it could only happen once, maybe once a year. And it's a really big deal for them. They'll prepare it for a very, very long time. And so once a year, they'll go somewhere.
When you came to photograph them, like the pop of the blue in the shoes, and how much do you work with the subjects to sort of pose, or how much do they sort of say, this is who we are? What's that interplay with you as the photographer artist?
First of all, of course, I placed them. I walked around their flat. I wouldn't touch anything because I don't believe you should touch other people's things. So I just found in the flat the place where they would look good, and I set them there. Those are just like regular, the cheapest slippers you can find. So I did not impact their slippers or what they were wearing.
Let's go to the next picture.
My gosh, perfect yoga pose.
Now, who are these people?
Thank you.
So Елизавета and Piotr, this is a couple that came from Donbass, from the Russian part of Ukraine to Moscow, and it was just around the time that the war has started. So because they didn't have the papers to be officially in Russia, they decided not to leave their home. They came to Moscow to open a yoga center. So they decided to stay at home, and then slowly they painted the walls. This is the flat that belongs to their aunt. And they started teaching people at home, and they've taken the habit of staying here. So now they run their yoga center from their flat, and they don't really leave it.
Do they do it on Zoom? Because I take yoga on Zoom now. Are they teaching it online?
Не знаю, но могу спросить. Не знаю.
No, but she could find out.
I'll take their class. They look amazing.
Live class.
I thought Ukraine was part of Russia. That part was part of Russia. So you need papers if you're in a different part of Russia from Ukraine?
Сейчас да.
Сейчас да. So it used to be impossible, but now yes. Now
Но они
being
все
from
равно,
Donbass,
они все равно должны оформлять документы, оформлять то, что они приехали.
but still they would have to do the paperwork about having immigrated from there to Moscow.
Right.
There's so much color, Natalia, and all these photographs. Like, is there something about the being at home and living with a lot of color? I mean, every single photograph that we're looking at is just exploding with color. Is there something about that you think that you're finding amongst these people?
Да, потому что, ну, во-первых, у них есть
Yes, of course. First of all, they have a lot of time to decorate their homes. But second, every single detail becomes very, very important. So they can spend a lot of time obsessing about little details of their household to make it look beautiful and aesthetic.
Now, this one looks like it's heavily influenced by Star Wars in a way. Is this woman a Star Wars cosplayer?
Yes.
Her name is Olga. She lives in St. Petersburg. It's one of the few photos I took outside of Moscow or the provinces in St. Petersburg. Yes, she's a fan of Star Wars and in general of sci-fi. And she's probably one of the few people I photographed, or the only one who truly makes a good living from home. So what she does is, first of all, she's a jeweler. So she makes jewels from silver and gold, but she also comments video games. And she has a huge number of followers and views. She's got views in the millions. So she has been quite successful building a business out of her home.
And do you think that it helps her that she is living this lifestyle? Does it help her with her talking to people on, her fans and making jewelry, the fact that she's focused and at home?
So yes, first of all, of course, she's very focused, and she takes a lot of photos. She's really good at taking her own photos at home. She's very good at PR, and she is fantastic at building this whole sort of PR image from home. And then once a year, she will also go to a festival. And I know that a couple of years ago, she went to a vampire festival. So she will make an appearance, but it's very rare. She'll do it maybe once a year.
Have you been in touch with some of these people, and given the pandemic, has anything about their perspective changed, and have you talked with them about that?
Especially if she likes vampires.
So I spoke to some of them. I even interviewed them since the pandemic has started for Russian press. They love it. They're ecstatic about it. They find it fantastic. I haven't spoken to all of them, but the ones I have to absolutely love the situation.
Now, will they go to the market, or will they, will they go out to the dentist and to the, will they leave their houses at all, or do they just stay in their houses?
Ну,
So in fact, it's a very good question about the dentist because in Russia, I mean, people don't have really great teeth dental care. So this person is a good example. He didn't leave the home for 5 years. When he went to the dentist, they had to extract 5 teeth.
Was he phobic to go out? And what's his story?
So yes, this person definitely. First of all, he lives with his mother and his sister, who they leave home, and so they can bring things in, but he stays in. He has an official shelter for animals, so people leave him animals, and he's got about 18 or 19 animals at home. Sometimes he gets money for people who donate money to take care of the animals, and as far as the phobia is concerned, he and many of the people that I photographed, outside of the ones who make money from cosplay and being on social media, most of them actually do have social phobias, whether it's a phobia of an open space or of interactions, social interactions. These are the kind of people who have trouble interacting with strangers, asking for help in a public transport. So yes, this is the main issue for them.
They seem very sensitive, these people. They also are they aware that they're staying in? Do they feel like they're missing something, or do they feel okay about where they are?
Да.
So yes, the previous photo person, Evgeny, when I photographed him, he kept looking at Google Maps to discover other places. He wanted to see what Finland looks like. He wanted to see Riga. And he does have a dream to travel, but to travel, he has to make money. And to make money, he needs to leave his home. And so it's a vicious circle where he cannot travel.
Who's this person?
Good.
Christina.
So her name is Christina. She's 30 years old. She lives here with her girlfriend. Before beginning to live at home like this, she worked for 10 years in McDonald's. And after that, she won't leave her home. And Natalia said, if it was me, I probably also wouldn't have left my home after working for 10 years in McDonald's. So she loves martial arts. So she practices martial arts. And she's now taking online courses to play the violin.
Она очень любит, она занимается боевыми искусствами, но дома раньше она занималась с ними постоянно.
Wow. What about, getting fresh air for everyone and just exercise? And I mean, the yoga people, we know what they're doing, hopefully, but just do they go outside in the backyard, or does not seeing sunlight, how does that affect, and how long can they go without that?
Well, many of them have a balcony, but that's just about it. They don't really do much more than that.
And who is she?
Her name is Anatoly. She was 32 at the time of this photo. She used to work in a television studio in Ostankino, which is the main television station. And she has a daughter who now, the daughter lives with her mom. Alena, in fact, has a real panic attacks. She literally cannot leave her home alone. She needs to have somebody accompany her. And the doctor comes to her house to give her the prescription. And she's been living there for 7 years.
Do they ever use the term agoraphobic? Does that ever come up as a, as a way to think about this?
No, they call them sociopath. That's how they're called in Russian usually.
When you look at all of this work that you made, does it tell us something about Russia that, as outsiders we can look at? Is there something about seeing all of these pieces in isolation that tells us something greater about what's happening in Russia today?
I think it's the result of globalization. I think this is just about the big cities, and the bigger the city, the more there are people like this who cannot handle it. So I feel like this tells us more about globalization as a whole.
I think it's interesting because I see I was seeing more that how it feels very international, that the kind of the imagery is being pulled from many different cultures. So I saw more of a common, globalization than a sort of unique country. I don't know. That was just what I was seeing.
Maybe it's that people are so connected to the rest of the world, so you can be a cosplayer from anywhere. Would that be your feeling about it too?
It's true that this is actually freeing them to be in touch with anybody across the world. So I feel like they talk to many more foreigners than I do. And in fact, anybody who speaks a good English now has then an opening to speak internationally. So in fact, they have more chances to speak with people outside of the country.
Although they do, at least as an outsider, they still retain a deep Russian feeling to them. It's globalization, but it's their version of it.
I think that every time, every international tendency has a national version. So yes, a Russified version of globalization, that's what she was referring to. I think there's always a national interpretation of a global trend.
Мне кажется, просто у русских как бы больше кошек. Мы все держим кошек.
I just think the Russians have more cats.
Yeah.
Ну, я смотрю изнутри, мне сложно сказать, что русское, что не русское. Я изнутри.
Is there
I'm looking from the inside. I'm looking from the inside, so it's hard for me to say what's Russian, what's not, because I'm inside of it.
right? Is there any way maybe there's not to track how the internet has really fostered more of this lifestyle? And do we have any kind of study around hermit or whatever we want to call this behavior in Russia before, like the birth of the internet?
I saw some analysis from the philosophical point of view, many articles, but I haven't seen any detailed research, statistical research. Perhaps it's too early to do that.
I think probably before you just move to Siberia and live, take a train and then, take a boat and just get as far upstream as you possibly could and then just live there in total isolation, which is true everywhere that happens,
Yeah, I also feel for myself, having been in living at home for almost a year, I tell you that I feel like I don't want to leave anymore. I kind of feel like, and I've done this thing with my little room that I live in for work. And I mean, I totally understand the sort of the onslaught. When I take a walk now out and I see a lot of people, I just feel assaulted by, it's too much, cars and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with people reemerging, I think, hopefully, if we all can safely get through this time in history. I think more people are going to probably live this way.
Yeah.
What do you think, Natalia?
Они очень...
So for these people, what I've seen is that they have a much stronger fence between themselves and the external world. They have a really hard time dealing with touch or any kind of interactions. So their reactions are much more exaggerated, much stronger to what we could be used to.
Natalia, thank you so much for sharing these beautiful photos with us and discussing them. It's been wonderful to get an insight into them.
Yeah, this has been amazing. And let's stay in touch, and we'll let people know where to find more of your work, because I think it's fantastic. And I think a lot of people will appreciate it and get great joy out of it. So there's a lot to think about, as Jessie said. So thank you.
Спасибо вам, Наталья.
So thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to tell you about this. I'm a little tired from going, following all of this, but I'm really grateful for this opportunity to tell you about my work.
Thank you very much. Bye, you guys.
Bye, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Bye.